What is going on, guys? Welcome to today's episode of Crossout. Today we're going to discuss all of the different fusions that you can get for the weapons and try to break down each of them that I find important that will potentially take your weapons to the next level in case you are considering to fuse your weapons. We're going to focus mostly on the epic and the legendary tier because we have almost any weapon type in that tier, and I think that's where fusions actually become fully relevant. They are also relevant earlier on, but at this stage they can actually make a difference for example, your clan was built in case you are thinking about fusing some of it. And let me just tell you that with the latest upgrade system, with the changes to the upgrade system, we've really gotten some interesting perks. So let's just get straight on into it. And I want to start off today by looking at the different machine guns that we have. We're just going to take them one weapon type at a time and go through all of them that we have here. And with the machine guns, we're seeing quite a lot of different new perks here. We have the usual durability, mass, and resistance to all damage, and this is something that you will see repeat on pretty much all of the items that you can get a power upgrade from. Just to state clearly so that no one is confused, you can get one of each of these when you fuse them. If there is 3, you will always get 3. If there is 2, you will always get 2. And for this aspect here, we have for the power, damage plus 5%, pretty self-explanatory. Time to overheating plus 10%, so your weapon will overheat slowly, which can be good for the aspect, but more on that in a second. And then the cooling rate, which means that when the gun has overheated, how long does it take for the gun to cool down again? Then we have handling, which is reduced spread, both for stationary and while moving, maximum range and optimum range. And the maximum range is basically how long does the gun shoot before the projectiles kind of run out. And the optimum range is considered the most optimal range for the maximum damage. And the damage usually downscales the further away you are from your target. So you can go further away and still have no damage scaling, which is nice. And then finally, the aim speed, which is when you turn your gun or you make some sort of a movement that will make your gun turn, how long does it take before the crosshair traverses in and becomes as tiny as possible and the gun is as precise as possible? By itself, the spread perk is nothing new. We also had that before, but with the introduction of the new system, meaning that we can actually get both damage and reduced spread, I do find this to be a very nice perk combined with all of the other ones. And also, it is a bit more explanatory now that we have spread while stationary and spread while moving. Before, it was just reduced spread, and I don't think it was 20%. I think it was it like 14, 15% on the old system? I'm actually not 100% sure about that. But I do think it makes a pretty great difference for the aspect. So we have 2 different guns here because I just want to show the mechanics. The aim speed is actually a bit hard to see here. I can show you that on the cannons later, but for now we're just going to watch these aspect machine guns. And this one over here has a reduced spread, so you will be able to see how that functions. And also we have time to overheating and damage on the other one. So you can see with the overheat just how much of an impact it is. Personally, I actually think the overheating is a pretty good perk as well for the aspect because it makes it just a bit easier for you to actually manage your gun when it fully overheats. As you can see, it's able to shoot just a few extra shots. But the good thing about it is, once you actually bring it up to that full heat, it will be a bit easier for you to tap fire because the gun does not overheat as aggressively as it would otherwise do. So it's a bit easier for you to sit here and tap fire and keep it at a somewhat decent cooling rate when you just get into the rhythm. Compared to the other one here, when you bring that up, the percentage just jumps a bit more aggressively, so you cannot, you have to be a bit more focused on not overheating it, but the other one was a bit more easy to keep stable actually. So that's the main difference. And then we have the spread, which I think for machine guns in general, be it an aspect or a minigun or any other gun, the rapid firing machine guns as well, I think it's going to make a huge difference. So this is the reduced spread, and we can, take out this wheel right here and have some relatively precise shots on the wheel. On the other hand, if we choose this one, the spread is not, that aggressive when you just tap fire it. But you will see a difference if we now go ahead and just spam fire this one and try to shoot. As you can see, the shots do spread out, but you have to hit that 50% before it becomes really crazy. But on the other hand, if we fire this one, hopefully you can see the difference. Like, there is definitely some difference to the spread here. And while this is, again, not a very new perk, it is, in my opinion, a perk that will make a lot of difference if you get that together with some damage. And especially when you then move on to look at something like the Arbiter, or if you look at the Imps, because the Imps you will take to closer range when you fight. And the good thing about the imps is that they can deal a lot of damage at close range, but they are also by nature quite unprecise. So getting this reduced spread, in my opinion, will definitely help out a lot with some of these guns. With the imps being one of them, if you like to play them. It's not really a meta weapon, so it's not very relevant for a lot of people, but if you do like it, then it is a great weapon indeed. Next up, we have the Reaper, which in my opinion has gotten some very interesting new perks, which is the Impulse from Hit. Let's start out by taking a look at all of them here. We have the durability, mass resistance again. Then we have the power, which is damage and barrel spool up time. So this will make the gunfire quicker. There are ways to cheese the system a bit. If you look in a direction where you don't have a firing angle, then you can keep the gun spinning. So as soon as you actually get out into an area where you can shoot, the gun will shoot like this. So I would rather just, cheese the mechanics of the game a bit than to get this fusion. But the impulse from hit can potentially be somewhat game changing to some people, and combine that with a reduced spread. Well, then you'll have, a pretty solid gun. But watch what happens here if we slap on 2 Reapers onto this build right here. Both of these have impulse from hit. And now if you go out here and try to shoot this thing out here, hopefully you guys will be able to see a difference at just how much the build actually moves when we start shooting it. When the guns then or the impulse from your own guns then almost knocks you over, then you gotta think creatively, and that's what I've done here. So we just slap on some legs to absorb the recoil here, and hopefully we will be able to see a difference in this. But as you can see, as soon as we get that push onto that, the build actually just starts flowing away. And then if you slap on a couple of Reapers that does not have it. The very important thing to remember here when you're shooting this car, but as you can see, it's not moving at all. The very important thing to remember here is that these cars out here are actually stopped, and you have extra traction whenever you stop because of the simple fact that your handbrake is sort of pulled if you're not rolling. But if you're shooting at a target who is already moving and you're shooting them with 2 of these 20% impulse, then I think for Reaper builds and clan modes, this will actually be able to help you defend yourself against melees, because it will slow them down, especially when you get that main armor off them and they become lighter. The impulse from the hits will definitely slow down their top speed as they move towards you. And while this should not be what you will try to rely on when you play Clan Wars with the Reapers, this could potentially be a good perk for you if you want to mess a bit with dogs. So, a very interesting fusion indeed. And then we also have the regular ammo reserves, which is common for ammo weapons. And you have the spread again and the recoil, the reduced recoil. The reduced recoil is not very important for big builds, but the spread is indeed very good, and combined with the impulse from hit, I think we will see some interesting Reaper fusions right there. And then after that, let's just quickly round off the Caucasus here. Not a very interesting weapon in any way, but it does have target lock speed. So if you fuse these, you can get target lock speed, meaning that the weapon will lock onto a target quicker than compared to if you didn't have it fused. It's not, I wouldn't recommend fusing the Caucasus ever in your life before you literally own every other weapon fused in the game. But it is a weapon that it's worth mentioning nevertheless. For shotguns, that is probably the biggest disappointment, I would say personally. These don't really have anything cool. It's pretty much just like machine gun, to be honest. There is nothing exciting here. Rotation speed is weapon rotation speed, so how quickly the weapon will rotate on your build. If you're changing directions a lot, if you get kited, maybe that's good, but I don't see it being a game changer in any way. What could potentially be cool though is the impulse from hit on the Nidhoggs, because the Nidhoggs have the same stuff, damage, impulse from hit, and reloading time, as not the reloading time, but the damage and the impulse as the Reaper has. And we are getting very close to the territory where things get very exciting. We will just round off the auto cannons, and then we are going to get to the actual cannons. And the cannons down here, I can say, have some insane perks that will definitely be game changing. Before we get to that though, we just have the autocannons. The autocannons is explosion damage, radius, and time to overheating, and then we have spread while stationary, spread while moving, recoil, and rotation speed. By itself, this is not very interesting, but I think it's worth just quickly touching upon the damage and the radius of the explosion. Because for most weapons, these have a fixed explosion radius of somewhere around 1.5, I think I've been able to figure. The explosion is not very big, so that also means that by itself, increased explosion radius is not going to do very much. For the whirlwind and for the new autocannon, the new special rarity autocannon, this might actually have an impact because of the fact that you have the perk that gives you a greater explosion radius the further away you get from your target. So, or the damage actually. So that 1.5 might be a lot of damage on that tiny bit of area. But in general, I don't see this being very game-changing at all. If we just quickly go out here and have a look at my Leviathan, I put on 2 stickers there to kind of represent the difference in it, somewhat what I'm assuming that it will be. So the Dawn's Children dude here, the inner circle going around all the way around here, is sort of representing the usual blast radius, which is about 1.5 to either side. I assume when you hit a full hit. I'm not even sure if it's that big. Like it could potentially just be 1 block that direction and 1 block that direction if you shoot, or 1 block that direction so to there, 1 block to that direction to there. But this will be the increase approximately in size that you will see, and this is big for an autocannon, but again, I'm not sure that the autocannon hits that big. So in case it's 1 block, then you might go out to here in total instead, and that's just not going to make a massive impact on your shots at all. So I don't think fusing most of these in general is going to give you a lot. For the Cyclone, I would definitely recommend going for time to overheating, as this gun will shoot quicker the longer it shoots. So if you can just keep shooting once you've spooled up the gun, then you're going to be in for a pretty long-lasting gun that can out. But again, also cannons, not all that exciting. So I kind of just want to take it to the turret cannons, because this is where things gets interesting. Let's go for the mammoth. Durability, miles, and resistance again. Then we have explosion damage, explosion radius, and reloading time. And now here's the introduction of a new fusion option, which is the projectile speed. And I want to start out just running a clip here that will show the projectile speed in action on a long distance, where I tested it with Renzi. So as you can see, the main difference of these guns here is actually the fact that the projectile flies so much quicker and so much longer. And the interesting thing about this is that if we just slap on 2 mammoths onto this, is the fact that not only do you get a projectile that reaches a target quicker, so it's harder to hit, but you also indirectly get more range on it without having to compensate as much, because of the fact that it flies out quicker. And the projectile speed is a fusion that has actually been introduced on a lot of guns. One hit there, the other one didn't. And it's going to be something that I see for many guns are going to make a huge difference indeed. And also for the Elephant, now that we have it on the Elephant, the increased bullet velocity. Let's just see projectile speed. Let's try to see if we can hit a fusion here that has it. So the Elephant and the Tsunami compared here, we can see absolutely nothing. Let's do that without the scope. As you can see, almost no difference, and this is quite unusual for turreted cannons. It's worth noting that in general, the Elephant does have a quite fast projectile speed compared to the fact that it is only a turreted cannon. So it is different from the Mammoth and the Fat Man and everything like that. But all in all, projectile speed gonna be quite game changing, and just for the sake of it, we also just tested it on the Executioner. And for the Executioner, you get somewhat the same damage radius and reloading time, projectile speed, recoil, and ammo reserve. So nothing very exciting besides that. It's still going to be quite game-changing with that perk. And the same thing when you go to the Tsunamis. We use Typhoons for the test, but just watch what happens here. When you get those long distances on, it's literally going to be close to impossible to juke those shots, because the shots just land so quickly. We're speaking like half of a second earlier across the map, and that's a lot considering how fast the shot flies already. Without saying anything else about these, because there's not much to say about them besides projectile speed is going to be very dominant. And if you, at the end of your lifetime, if prices continue to go like they are, fusing relics are actually going to be realistic at some point. So, stay on it. But nevertheless, if you decide to fuse your Executioners or your Tsunamis, those are definitely going to be a good fusioner option. And then we have it for the Crickets and the Locust. And these are actually a bit harder to tell that we have them. Let's just start out by looking at the overall fusion options that we have here. We have explosion radius, damage and reloading time again, projectile speed, ammo reserves, and reduced spread. Nothing very exciting and new here, but once again we have this new perk of projectile speed. In general, crickets are very strong but also very easy to dodge, but with the crickets you can now get reduced spread, you can get projectile speed, and the projectile speed combined with something like, you know, reload means that you can just launch fast flying rockets into an area all the time. And when people are used to, you know, you see crickets coming out and then you can go out afterwards if you know that your cricket is just shot. But if you get the reloading time and then also the projectile speed, then you will be able to snipe that target on the next time he peeks in case you just shot. So that will definitely make some difference for crickets as well. And I know a lot of people already have fused crickets, so maybe you've gotten lucky already with your fusions. Now, for the Locust here, it's going to be hard to see, so I'm just going to shoot a couple shots here, and then hopefully you can see it. Watch the missiles coming out of the left barrel, because those are the fused ones. In general, what I want you to look for is just the fact that if they come out at somewhat the same altitude, that then the left rocket will go quite substantially further compared to the other one. And I know it's hard to see, but I hope that you can sort of, you know, that you get the memo that the right rockets are in general not flying as far unless they get a good lift there at the beginning. And there is just a lot of spread on these. That was a pretty good example. There is just a lot of spread on these rockets. So it's a very hard weapon to actually show in action. But this means that it will be easier for you to cover greater distances without having to compensate as much for your shots. Also hit your targets easier because the rockets get there quicker. All in all, I think it's, again, these fusions are going to be quite game-changing for some of these weapons, and I think it's going to be funny to see crickets now that you can get all of these very good fusions. Then we have the Pyre and the Hurricane, which are the homing missiles, and in general these are quite broken because watch this, max projectile flight time plus 0 seconds. And again, damage radius, reload time, ammo reserves, missile turn speed, so the missile will be better at flying in the air, which means that you can hit targets, for example, closer to you. But the projectile speed, then you might be thinking, it's a Hurricane, it flies forever, so why would it have that perk? That might just be why. Nope, because the Pyre has it as well. And also if you go on to look at the TOW has it as well. And I tested this, there is no difference. You get about 8 seconds on the TOW, a little more than 8 seconds on the TOW, and the upgraded TOW you also get a little more than 8 seconds. So this fusion is pretty broken indeed. I don't know why they did this, but besides that, nothing much to say about it, so we won't cover these as they're not very relevant. Then we have the red shirt. Let's just look at the options here. Again, looking at damage radius and then time to overheating, since you can fire these multiple times, even though it is an ammo weapon. Then we have spread while stationary. In my opinion, spread is going to be pretty good, but the real deal here is, again, projectile speed. And the reason that I want to highlight projectile speed once again is the fact that with that, you will actually be able to cover some very big areas. The biggest limitation to the retro is the fact that the projectiles are flying quite slowly. And since they are flying quite slowly, then you won't be able to shoot very far with them unless you shoot very high. With the changes to this, launch these, then watch the projectiles here, how much further they go. Oh, that's very interesting. Is that a new bug? Look at that, because the projectiles from the one gun actually stays longer, the right gun. You see that? 4 of them runs out and the other 4 drops to the ground. So with the increased projectile speed, the projectiles also run out earlier because these are all shot at the same time. The 4, which is the highest right now, is the ones that I shot out of the left gun. And they do indeed go out before the other ones. So this might be an interesting bug that is worth reporting. I'll probably just go ahead and do that because it is a bit sad. But you see a lot of those projectiles despawn. Very interesting, guys. We're finding bugs here, and this is, I can already tell you, not the only bug that I've actually found. I don't know if it is a bug, but something is up, and we'll get to it in just a second. It's the Helius. The wretches, the projectile speed does some sketchy stuff. You should be able to cover greater distances with it, but for now it seems a bit broken, but it's gonna get there. Aurora, quick mention, nothing too much. Barrel spool up times, you will be able to shoot quicker once you hit the trigger button. And then you have the part heating rate, which will actually increase how quickly you heat the parts that you're shooting at, which is also a quite cool perk in my opinion. And pulses, again, bringing out the projectile speed, because the projectile speed will once again be game-changing, because of the simple fact that pulses are also quite easy to dodge from longer ranges. But this definitely makes them a better matchup against cannons now that we have the fact that the gun can actually shoot quicker. So left gun, again, watch the projectile coming out of that one as we shoot the bus down here. You see that difference in the impact? There we go. So just on those 300 meters, you already get a pretty big difference in it. So it's definitely gonna make a difference for those as well. But besides that, we are again just looking at explosion radius and damage and reloading time, blah 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 blah, ammo reserves and rotation speed, since it is a turreted gun. And then here comes the Helius, and the Helius is also very interesting. The reason that the Helius is very interesting is the fact that if you have one gun that is used for charge time, which the left gun is, watch what happens to the right gun here. We can actually fire that one and cycle it much easier. Let's start out with just only a regular one here. Yep, let's remove that one and just do 2 regular guns here. And let's shoot these. Now watch, as if you click too early here, this is like a perfect cycle. But if you click too early, then the icon will actually flash red like that. You see that? So if you click just a tiny second too early, then the icon will flash red. But if you mix a regular Helius with a Helius with projectile charge time, you'll actually be able to cycle them. Pretty much. They will run out of sync at some point, but you will actually be able to cycle them. Even though one gun is charging a bit, it's kind of awkward. But for some couple shots, I think it's every 3rd or 4th shot, it will run out of sync basically. But it is doable for quite some time. And I don't know if that's because one gun drags the other one up or the other gun drags the other one down, you know, but definitely feels like you can cycle them quicker every 3rd shot or so. Yeah, I don't know if this is a bug or if it made it easier, because in general, a regular Helius also just feels easier to shoot. Before, you would really have to cycle these very precisely. Unless, you know, you couldn't really shoot before you'd actually seen the white thingy in the icon like I'm doing right now, for example. But now you can really click quite easily to fire these guns. And I don't know if it's something wrong with the Helius, but it's gonna make a difference for Helius to how quick you can actually cycle them. Definitely the charge time for the Helius is a very interesting perk, because these guns can be cycled so quickly now. Like, just so quickly. Besides that, we have the damage on it, and then we have the range, projectile speed, and rotation speed. Range, once again, will be a pretty good fusion for the gun too. Then coming to the Spark, I cannot really figure, because the Spark has regular fusions that you would see on anything else, damage, times overheating, and cooling rate. And then the angle of impact, I have not been able to figure what the angle of impact is, because I'm assuming that it may be the angle that you can hit people. This is just a regular Spark, but the thing is with the Spark that you can hit people pretty much anywhere already. So when we go to here, you know, if we park our front wheel at this grass right here, we can somewhat hit that build still. But if we get an angle of impact Spark, then we should be able to go just a bit further away. I'm assuming that that is what the new Spark can actually do for us. I'm not 100% sure, because I feel like I've tested this a lot and nothing really makes sense to it. You know, it's hard to tell, because I don't really see a massive difference, but I'm not sure if we parked 100% same spot that we were before, and there could be a bit of an angle in the car as well. But the angle of impact, it could potentially, that's my like best bet, that it simply just widens up the angle that you can hit people from. But there's a lot of ways to bug out the Spark and shoot through your build and stuff like that, so I wouldn't worry too much about it, to be honest. And then we have the trigger and the blockchain, which I'm also just going to cover quickly, nothing too crazy there. The pod heating rate is going to be pretty exciting indeed. Also for the blockchain, there it is. We have aim speed, maximum speed, rotation speed, damage, and reloading time. So that's just like any other weapon that can, you know, just tap fire, do whatever, machine guns, shotguns, all that stuff. And then we have the assembler, and the assembler has a couple of interesting things as well. Projectile charge time, meaning that you can charge each shot quicker, and then projectile speed. Let's look at all of them right here. Damage and projectile charge time. I would definitely go for the charge time, because that will make you shoot full damage shots so much quicker. It's definitely going to be worth it. And then you have the projectile speed again. Let's take the projectile speed right here. There we go. And grab one that does not have it. And then go out and shoot these bad boys. And then we only have a few weapons left down here, not a lot to say about each of them. Funny thing is, with the Phoenix here, you actually get some funny ones for the handling. Projectile speed again, making it easier to hit. Then the bomb wick burn speed, so you can actually have these detonate quicker, which is, in my opinion, nice because sometimes people run to their allies and they spark them off and stuff like that. And then the spike projectile speed and impulse from hit, meaning that you can flip people easily with these. The spike has an impulse like no tomorrow. People flying all over when you get hit by these. So that is probably going to be a funny fusion if you get someone that actually has those fusions. And then the harvester didn't really get anything new. It's just melee damage, ram damage, and then resistant mass and durability. And this is the same for all melees. They have the same perks and you can only get 2 of them. For the remedies, it's damage and time to overheating cooling rate. So anything else that has, depends on how quickly it overheats. And it has ammo reserves since it uses ammo to shoot. Same with the Draco. Capcan also kept most of its stuff. Projectile range. I think the projectile range here is sort of, the range of the shot itself. Activation speed, meaning how quickly it deploys when it hits the ground. And number of deployments, meaning your ammo, basically. So you get more ammo for the cap cannon. You get 1 more with this fusion. And then we have the active time, the cap can active time, and the reloading time. And I'm assuming cap can active time is the lifespan of it, while the active time is the time that it stays active after it, hit the first target, because the cap can starts a counter as soon as you hit someone, and I'm assuming that gets a bonus to 9%. Fortunes has the same stuff that you would see on explosive weapons, and then projectile speed, again, really good for the fortune. Let's try once more here. The incinerator also carrying fire puddle damage, fire puddle radius, projectile speed, ammo reserves, blah 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 blah. You get the pattern here for the rest of them. And then the mandrakes, which also have explosion radius, explosion damage. And personally, I've fused my mandrakes on my horizontal ones, and I am definitely liking the reduced spread on it. Then we have the annihilator drone, which I'm assuming that you guys also really would like to see. Drone damage increased by 5%, active time plus 10, reloading time minus 17. Maximum range, activation speed, and drone durability. So basic drone fusions, but nevertheless the 10% extra active time or the increased range so that you can kill people from greater distances is probably going to be annoying if you see people fuse these. And then for the fuse drones, or for the drones in general, it's all the same pretty much. Drone durability, range, reload, active time, explosion damage. We've seen most of this before. And for the Corvo, you will see damage and reload, spread, reduced spread, aim speed. And then finally we have the adapter, which is also just damage, rotation speed, and a little bit of projectile speed. This one already shoots quite quick, so that's also going to be nice. And then the Skinner finally, which is reload time, armor penetration. I don't really know what they mean with armor penetration. I don't know if the Skinner actually flies into the build and then can go further in and grab parts. If you have 2 parts stacked to each other, usually it would hit the front part and then it would fall off if that part falls off. So I don't know if it can hit parts behind that as well. Never heard of this before. But it's quite interesting if it is like that, because that will make it easier for you to stay onto targets and also just make the Skinner even more annoying. And then cable wind-up speed, meaning how quickly do you wheel in people. And then we have projectile speed and rotation speed, and the maximum range, which is also nice. And that ended up being a really long video, guys, but I hope you enjoyed it nevertheless. If there is any questions about the fusions, do ask them down in the comments, and I will try to reply to as many of you as possible. I'll see you guys in the next video. Bye bye.